Kaaba. Kaaba is the holiest site in Islam, often called by names as Bayt Allah, also known as House of Allah, metaphorically meaning Allah's residence. Hajj. Hajj is the Muslim pilgrimage to Mecca that takes place in the last month of the year. All Muslims are expected to make it at least once in a lifetime. Hajj is also can be meaning for to set out for a place. That's what pilgrimage means, to set out for a place. It means you're on a journey. A Sunni. What is the meaning of Orthodox Sunni? A Sunni is a member of the largest branch of Islam. A Sunni is a Muslim who believes that Caliph Abu Bakr was the rightful successor to Muhammad after his death. There are several different traditions within the Sunni branch of Islam, but Sunnis are often described as Orthodox Muslims. What is the difference between Orthodox Islam and Christianity? Christians believe that Yeshua was the incarnated Son of God, divine and sinless. Islam teaches that Yeshua was one of the most important prophets of God, but not the Son of God, not divine, and not part of the Trinity. Rather, Muslims believe the creation of Yeshua was similar to the creation of Adam. Before I go further with this, I want to let everyone know out there that I am not condoning any conversion through this video. I myself personally do not believe in this religion, and I myself are not trying to convert anyone into the Sunni Muslim. I'm here to teach and give information about things that I'm led to give on, whether it's religion or not. To Muslims, Hajj is associated with religious as well as social significance. The obligation for performing this pilgrimage is only fulfilled if it is done on the 8th to 12th day of the last month of the Islamic calendar. If in a given year, an adult Muslim is in good health and their life and wealth are saved, they must perform the Hajj in the same year. Delaying it is considered sinful unless the delay is caused by reasons beyond their control. Apart from being an obligatory religious duty, the Hajj is seen to have a spiritual merit that provides Muslims with an opportunity of self-renewal. Hajj serves as a reminder of the day of judgment when Muslims believe people will stand before God. Hadith literature articulates various merits a pilgrim achieves upon successful completion of their Hajj. After successful pilgrimage, pilgrims can prefix their names with the title El-Haji and are held with respect in Muslim society. However, Islamic scholars suggest Hajj should signify a Muslim's religious commitment and should not be a measurement of their social status. Hajj brings together and unites the Muslims from different parts of the world, irrespective of their race, color, and culture, which acts as a symbol of equality. A 2008 study on the impact of participating in the Islamic pilgrimage found that Muslim communities become more positive and tolerant after Hajj experience. The study noted that the Hajj increases belief in equality and harmony among ethnic groups and Islamic sects and leads to more favorable attitudes toward women, including greater acceptance of female education and employment, and that Hajis show increased belief in peace, equality, and harmony among adherents of different religions. Malcolm X, an American activist during the Civil Rights Movement, describes the sociological atmosphere he experienced at his Hajj in the 1960s as follows. There were tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. They were all colors, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans. But we were all participating in the same ritual, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood that my experiences in America had led me to believe never could exist between the white and the non-white. America needs to understand Islam because this is the one religion that erases from its society the race problem. You may be shocked by these words coming from me, but on this pilgrimage, what I have seen and experienced has forced me to rearrange much of my thought patterns previously held. Malcolm X in Mecca. And for the note, since he had visited the Hajj, Malcolm X had adopted his name, which was then El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, meaning the pilgrim Malcolm the Patriarch. That's what his name was before he passed away. On April 13, 1964, Malcolm X left the United States on a personal and spiritual journey through the Middle East and West Africa. By the time he returned on May 21st, he'd visited Egypt, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Ghana, Morocco, and Algeria. In Saudi Arabia, he experienced what amounted to his second life-changing epiphany as he accomplished the Hajj, or pilgrimage to Mecca, and discovered an authentic Islam of universal respect and brotherhood. The experience changed Malcolm's worldview. Gone was the belief in white people as exclusively evil. Gone was the call for black separatism. His voyage to Mecca helped him discover the atoning power of Islam as a means to unity as well as self-respect. Quote, in my 39 years on this earth, quote, he will write in his autobiography, quote, the holy city of Mecca had been the first time I had ever stood before the creator of all and felt like a complete human being. It had been a long journey and a brief life. Before Mecca, the Nation of Islam, Malcolm's first epiphany occurred 12 years earlier when he converted to Islam while serving an 8 to 10 year prison sentence for robbery. But back then, it was Islam according to Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam, an odd cult whose principles of racial hatred and separatism and whose beliefs about white people being a genetically engineered race of devils stood it in contrast with Islam's more orthodox teachings. Malcolm X bought in and rapidly rose in the ranks of the organization, which was more like a neighborhood guild, albeit a disciplined and enthusiastic one, than a nation. When Malcolm arrived, Malcolm's charisma and eventual celebrity built the Nation of Islam into the mass movement and political force it became in the early 1960s. Delusions and independence. The Nation of Islam's Elijah Muhammad turned out to be much less than the upstanding moral paragon he pretended to be. He was a hypocritical serial womanizer who fathered numerous children out of wedlock with his secretaries. A jealous man who resented Malcolm's stardom, and a violent man who never hesitated to silence or intimidate his critics. His knowledge of Islam was also relatively slight. Imagine, quote, being a Muslim minister, a leader in Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam, quote, Malcolm wrote, quote, and not knowing the prayer ritual, quote. Elijah Muhammad had never taught it. It took Malcolm's disillusionment with Muhammad and the nation finally to break away from the organization and set out on his own, literally and metaphorically, to the authentic heart of Islam. And there you have it. So I made a video. I was assuming that he was being enlightened by Yeshua HaMashiach, but that was not it. He was, after this trip to the Kaaba in Mecca, he was enlightened with, I guess, quote, more authentic Muslimship. So he wasn't trying to be no Christian. He was getting converted over into the Sunni Islam. He was a Sunni Muslim. Okay, Hajj. Sometimes also spelled Hadj, Hajj, or Haji, Hadji, is an annual Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, the holiest city for Muslims. Hajj is a mandatory religious duty for Muslims that must be carried out at least once in their lifetime by all adult Muslims who are physically and financially capable of undertaking the journey and of supporting their family during their absence from home. In Islamic terminology, Hajj is a pilgrimage made to the Kaaba, the house of Allah, in the sacred city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, alongside Shahada, meaning oath to Allah and Muhammad, the messenger of Allah. Salah, meaning prayer. Zakat, almsgiving. And Sawm, meaning fasting of Ramadan. The Hajj is an annual practice when Muslim brotherhood is on display and their solidarity with fellow Muslim people. Their solidarity with fellow Muslim people and submission to God, Allah, is fulfilled. The word Hajj means pilgrimage made to the Kaaba, a long, pious journey taken by Muslims to cleanse their souls of all worldly sins, which connotes both the outward act of a journey after death and the inward act of good intentions. The rites of pilgrimage are performed over 5 to 6 days, extending from the 8th to the 12th or 13th of Dhul al-Hajjah, the last month of the Islamic calendar, because the Islamic calendar is lunar and the Islamic year is about 11 days shorter than the Gregorian year. The Gregorian date of Hajj changes from year to year. In 2023 AD, Dhul al-Hajj extends from 19th June to 18th July. So that's with the Hajj. Okay, we're going to give some meanings on the finger. A lot of people be asking about, what do the one finger mean with the Sunni Muslims. I was curious myself, so I started to look into it. Okay, Tawheed. Tawheed is the name that, they use for the one finger gesture. And it means oneness of God. It also can be denoted as the indivisible oneness of God. So when you see a Muslim with the one finger up, it means Tawheed in Arab. And Tawheed in Arab means oneness of God in English. The single raised index finger is said to signify the oneness of God in Islam. It refers to the Shahada statement of faith. When Muslims in prayer proclaim that Allah is the only God and that Muhammad is his prophet, the gesture was traditionally used during sermons. So, bang, that's what the one index finger mean with that one. I also want to give out the new name that Malcolm X had adopted after visiting the Hajj. Well, after partaking with his Hajj, visiting the Kaaba. Something I just got to get used to saying when I'm explaining this. So, his name was adopted as El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. That was Malcolm X adopted name after he'd visit the Kaaba in Mecca. El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. I never knew that. But, they said that you get your name changed and all that once you visit that. That's a stamp on, your experience with taking that Hajj, which means pilgrimage, also meaning journey to the Kaaba, which is in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. I'm going to bring out some story about Malcolm Latif Shabazz. This is Malcolm X's grandson. It's a kind of sad story about this brother, but I also want to talk about it because he was also a Muslim. He was a Sunni Muslim too. He was part of the Orthodox Islam. It didn't mention much about it, but looking through information with his passing and the story on what happened, I got clarification that he was in fact an Orthodox Muslim. Malcolm Latif Shabazz was born October 8, 1984 and died May 9, 2013. He was the grandson of civil rights activist Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz. Through their daughter, Quabilla Shabazz, Shabazz made headlines for multiple arrests during his life, including setting the fire that killed his grandmother, Betty. He was murdered in Mexico on May 9th, 2013, at the age of 28. Wow. Malcolm Shabazz was born in Paris on October 8th, 1984. His father, L.A. Busoba, was an Algerian Muslim whom his mother, Quabilla Shabazz, an African-American Quaker and former Muslim, met there while studying. His mother is of African-American, African Grenadian, English and Scottish descent. He was the first male descendant of Malcolm X. According to Malcolm, he never met his father. Other sources say Malcolm knew his father, but they had little contact with one another. When Malcolm was a few months old, he and his mother moved to Los Angeles. A little while later, they moved to New York City and then Philadelphia. One landlord there remembered frequently having to let young Malcolm into the apartment because his mother was not at home. Malcolm showed some evidence of disturbance as a child. As a 3-year-old, he reportedly set fire to his shoes. He brought a knife to school in the 3rd grade. About the same time, he suffered from delusions and was hospitalized for a short time. During the early 1990s, Malcolm often stayed with his grandmother Betty and his aunts in New York, while his mother Quabilla lived with various friends. In 1994, Malcolm moved with his mother to Minneapolis. She was being drawn into a plot to assassinate Louis Farrakhan by an FBI informant, Michael Fitzpatrick. Malcolm saw in Fitzpatrick the father figure he had never known, calling him my dad. This whole sentence confused me, but I gotta move forward. In January 1995, Quabilla was charged with trying to hire an assassin to kill Farrakhan. She accepted a plea agreement with respect to the charges, in which she maintained her innocence by accepting responsibility for her actions. Under the terms of the agreement, she was required to undergo psychological counseling and treatment for drug and alcohol abuse for a 2-year period in order to avoid a prison sentence. For the duration of her treatment, 10-year-old Malcolm was sent to live with Betty at her apartment in Yonkers, New York. Malcolm visited Quabilla in December 1996 in San Antonio, where she was undergoing treatment. She had remarried, and Malcolm quickly bonded with his stepfather. The marriage soon ended. Malcolm and his mother began to fight, sometimes physically. On February 26, 1997, she called the police saying she wanted him committed to a mental hospital. After a brief stay, Malcolm was released in April. He called the police and reported that they had been in a fight. His mother said she was going to place him in foster care, but sent Malcolm back to New York on April 26 to live with his grandmother instead. Okay, arson and juvenile detention. It gets deep, y'all. On June 1st, 1997, Malcolm Shabazz, then 12 years of age, started a fire in Betty Shabazz's apartment. She suffered burns over 80% of her body. The police found Malcolm wandering the streets barefoot and reeking of gasoline. Betty Shabazz died of her injuries on June 23, 1997. At a hearing, experts described Malcolm as psychotic and schizophrenic. He was also described as brilliant but disturbed. Despite opposition from both Shabazz's defense attorney and the state prosecutors, The presiding family court judge did not close the case to the press, citing his desire, quote, to preserve the integrity of public proceedings, quote. Family court cases in the state were frequently closed to protect children in sensitive cases, though the judge's decision in the Shabazz case came 2 weeks after the state's chief judge announced new rules to keep family court cases open to the public. That's the reason why I didn't know nothing about this. Former New York City Mayor David Dickens and former Manhattan Borough President Percy Sutton represented Malcolm Shabazz in his Westchester family court trial. At the end of each hearing, Dickens and Sutton would make a motion to hug Shabazz before he was handcuffed, shackled, and led back to detention. The two lawyers accepted that he started the fire, but argued he intended no real harm to his grandmother. Throughout the trial, Dickens and Sutton tried to arrange an alternative to youth detention that would satisfy their security, therapeutic, and academic standards by visiting locations from North Carolina to upstate New York. Shabazz pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 18 months of juvenile detention at Hillcrest Education Center in Pittsfield, MA, for manslaughter and arson, with possible annual extensions until his 18th birthday. After his 18th month sentence elapsed, Shabazz was transferred to Leak and Watts, another treatment center in Yonkers, New York. Following 2 attempted escapes from the Yonkers facility, officials transferred him to Woodfield Cottage in Valhalla, New York. He and another resident escaped the facility within a month. Though the teenager was abroad for a single afternoon and did not commit any additional crimes, Westchester County Attorney Alan Schneikman decided to prosecute him due to the alarm, quote, alarm, the search caused in the local community. Shabazz was eventually released after 4 years. Man, bro was wild. In a 2003 interview with the New York Times, Shabazz, then 18, gave his version of the fire and the events leading up to it. He explained that he had been unhappy living in New York with his grandmother and had stated, quote, be in bed, doing anything to get them to send me back to my mother. Then I got the idea to set the fire, quote. Expressing remorse for the event, Shabazz continued. I set a fire in the hallway. I didn't think the whole thing through thoroughly. But she didn't have to run through the fire. There was another way out the house from her room. I guess what she thought was I was stuck and she had to run and get me because I was in the fire, it was in front of my room as well. She ran through the fire. I did not picture that happening, that she would do that. Wow. She ran through the fire to come save your butt. And she died. While you running around here still wilding out. It's crazy. But that's how she died. She had 80% burns on her body. It's crazy. Ran through the fire trying to save her grandson. Expressing regret for his actions, Malcolm said he would sit on his jail cot and ask for a sign of forgiveness from his dead grandmother, Shabazz said. I just wanted her to know I was sorry, and I wanted to know she accepted my apology, that I didn't mean it. But I would get no response. And I really wanted that response. You think? In the same interview, Shabazz also dismissed the child psychiatrist's diagnosis of him at his trial that he was a paranoid schizophrenic, saying that he had only, quote, made up a story about hearing voices in his childhood, quote, to get attention. Lord have mercy. Following his release, Shabazz lived for a time with his aunt, Isa Shabazz. He was arrested in 2002 for stealing $100. He pleaded guilty to attempted robbery and was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. Shabazz was arrested again in 2006 for punching a hole in a store's glass window. In 2010, Shabazz made the Hajj to Mecca. In February 2013, Iranian state-controlled press TV reported that Shabazz had been arrested by the FBI while en route to Iran. The story was widely reported, but 2 days later, Shabazz's family announced that the press TV report was incorrect. They said Shabazz had been arrested, but his arrest had nothing to do with the FBI or Iran. His death. Shabazz died in Mexico City on May 9, 2013, at the age of 28. He was said to be on a tour to demand more rights for Mexican construction workers relocated to the U.S. His body, which according to prosecutors had been badly beaten with a rod or some kind, was found in the street in Plaza Garibaldi, a busy tourist spot. Wow. According to New York Magazine, a friend who was with Shabazz the night of his death said the beating was related to a dispute over a $1,200 bar tab for drinks and female companionship. Wow. On May 13, David Hernandez Cruz and Manuel Alejandro Perez de Jesus, waiters at a nightclub called the Palace, were arrested in connection with Shabazz's death. In 2015, Perez de Jesus and Juan de Durquio Guzman, the head waiter at the Palace, were each sentenced to terms of 27 years and 6 months for their roles in the murder. As of June 2015, Hernandez was awaiting trial, and a fourth suspect was still being pursued by police. Approximately 200 people attended his funeral in California. One activist stated that Shabazz had plans to construct mosques and schools throughout America. Shabazz was survived by his mother, his 2 daughters, and 5 aunts. He was buried in Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York, near the graves of his grandparents, Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz.